This is Andi Purewal for Boxing News. I'm joined by Adam Morallee here in Birmingham. Adam, good to see you. How is life treating you?
Yeah, good, thanks Andy. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And here we are back in the mecca of boxing, Birmingham. You know what it is. And your man behind you, Dacres, returns. Not the fight that everybody was looking forward to, but still an intriguing fight, because that fight with Mr. Webster the first time around left a lot of question marks surrounding Sol. So before we come on to the obvious talk of David Adeleye, talk to me about how quickly you had to work on trying to find a suitable replacement, and how Webster came into the forum.
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously we had Adeleye lined up before and he dropped out a couple of times, so it was a real big disappointment that David dropped out through injury. It's kind of that whole Adeleye fight has delayed Sol's career a bit. You know, different options, always we're going to fight Adeleye, dropped out, going to fight him, dropped out. So it was disappointing, but look, Michael Webster's a great guy, always up for it. I think after he fought Sol, it's just my opinion, but after he fought Sol, he looked very good, and it was tough for him to get work as a B-side opponent. So I think he's only fought once since then, but yeah, took the call and he was ready straight away. So credit to the guy.
How much notice has he had for this step in?
Not long, max 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks.
Obviously still won't be ideal for him, but was this kind of the only name that maybe did the team discussed because of the question marks from the first fight?
Not really. I mean, look, you've got to have someone on the board who's going to pass to defend an English title, and then you go through and it's short notice, who's going to take it. We did consider an international opponent and defending and getting an international title and not defending the English. But, you know, Sol wants to do this the right way. He wants to defend the English. He wants to go up to British title next.
So with this fight this time around, how different of a battle do you expect to see?
I think we're going to see Sol considerably lighter. I think he weighed in at 246, which was a heavy weight for Solomon Dacres. He has campaigned around just under 230, and I think tomorrow on the scales you're going to see Sol nearer to that 230, that 226, 230 weight, and I think you're going to see a very different Sol. I mean, look, he was ultimately not at his best. You don't want to sugarcoat it. I do think he won the fight. I know others think it was much tighter. I do think he won the fight, but there are question marks, and he's got to answer those question marks. And I think the thing about Webster is we're going to see a fight that probably goes quite a lot of rounds. And you're going to see the difference in Solomon Dacres there to Solomon Dacres now. And what that means is, what I've always believed, he is a proper contender at British level, and he will fight the winner of Wardley Clark.
So on that note then, do you think that the David Adeleye fight, certainly for the meantime, is kind of dead in the water moving forward?
Completely dead in the water, yeah. I mean, Sol doesn't want to go through this again, only for it not to happen. I really like David Adeleye. I think he's a terrifically talented boxer, but I don't think him and Sol are destined to meet. After this fight, I think Wardley Clark is going to have to purse bids. I think it will happen, you know, September, October. Next fight for Sol is the winner of that.
Moving away then from all things Adeleye, Sol Dacres, Clark and Wardley, your man Joe Joyce returns next week as well against Derek Chisora. Before we come on to that fight, we saw a video recently of Derek Chisora getting into more than just an altercation with a delivery driver. I was trying to get your thoughts on that video, and if ever there were any concerns that maybe the board might step in or any sanctions might be put in place before the fight.
Look, the minute I saw the video, I was a little bit concerned. I think people get kind of excited about those videos. You don't know, context is important, and I don't know the context surrounding it for Derek. I don't think, you know, the board are quite harsh on boxers, you know, using their fists out in public. I think it was a relatively minor altercation in the greater scheme of things. So I do hope no action's taken.
Have there been discussions, do you know, have the board spoken?
I've had no discussions. I've had no discussions with the promoter. I'm sure the board would speak to Derek if they deemed it necessary to speak to him. But like I say, context is very important. When you just see a small social media clip, you don't know what actually happened.
With the fight itself, and provided there is no kind of intervention from the board, it is an interesting one. Obviously, for a while now, a lot of people have wanted to kind of see Derek sail off into the sunset for everything he's done in the sport. But now it's a bit of a crossroads fight for Joe as well, because obviously he's had a couple of tough defeats. The Zhilei Zhang comes back with Derek Chisora, who, regardless of whether people want to see him returning, he is, and he will just come and he will give it his all. How much of a fear factor do you feel like this has put into Joe, if any?
Look, I think from Joe's perspective, he's not a bit in his best. He wasn't at his best against Cash Ali. He wasn't obviously at his best against Zhang, but I do think he's been written off too early. After the Parker performance, people thought he was a world beater. He was in everyone's top 3, and he's had 2 bad performances. There are reasons why Joe's been in the place he's been in, and I'm really hopeful when you see next week what you're going to see from Joe Joyce is different to what you saw against Cash Ali. He's leaner, he's meaner, his body's different, and I, as his manager, can see his focus is different now. He's back to the Parker Joe Joyce. And I think the Chisora fight is a really, really tough fight, actually. And as a manager, you look at it, it's not really a win-win fight. It's almost a lose-lose fight for Joe. Joe deals with Chisora very easily. Everyone says Chisora's finished. Joe struggles with Chisora. Everyone says, well, that was a bad performance from Joe. So it is a little lose-lose for him. But nevertheless, I do think come fight week, there will be a lot of noise and attention on this. I do think Joe is going to get a knockout in that fight. And I do think that's going to set him up to go to Saudi, because that's where we're heading next.
That was going to be my next question. Obviously, you've seen out in Saudi Arabia, Derek Adeleye Sheikh's got a love for the heavyweight division. He's made a lot of fights in that division of recent times. Is there anybody who you guys are looking at in particular, which, let's say, if he was to be given a chance to go and fight on one of those cards, there's certain names which might be a bit closer to be made than others?
Yeah, look, I think Turki El Sheikh does love heavyweight boxing, and to be fair to him, since he's come into heavyweight boxing, Joe's had 2 losses. Joe's had losses to Zhang and a not brilliant victory against Cash Ali, so the phone hasn't been burning up from Saudi. I do think this performance is going to be the trigger for us to get Saudi interested. And in terms of opponents, look, I think you look at, we love the Joe Parker rematch. We absolutely love the Joe Parker rematch. We did love the Dubois rematch until he got the AJ fight. But I do think the thing about Joe is, now, although he's kind of maligned as losing twice to Zhang, people in boxing know what Joe Joyce is about. So it's difficult for Joe because he's not an easy night's work for anyone. He never stops coming. It's not an easy night's work for Dubois, and he's not an easy night's work for Parker, bearing in mind both of them already lost to him and have tasted defeat to him. So we want those rematches. Outside of that, I've been talking to the Warrens about taking fights which are good for his ranking. You look at someone like Agit Kabayel, it's a good fight for Joe Joyce, moving up. I think he's ranked 1 or 2 with the BC. We wanted the Bakole fight for this fight. I know he's fighting Jared Anderson, but we wanted that fight for this fight, and it was between Bakole and Chisora signed and Bakole didn't.
That's going to be my next question, because I did see that there was a lot of rumours that Bakole was in the frame, and it seemed to be a lot closer than what the Chisora fight was to being announced. So what happened with it?
Look, it was just, without getting into confidential details, as Joe's manager, we had that 27th of July 02 date, and I needed to get him an opponent. So you run negotiations in parallel, and both people knew we were running negotiations in parallel, and we were basically just saying, look, whoever signs first gets it, effectively. And Chisora stuck. I spoke to Nicole, Chisora signed.
One final one before we wrap this up, Adam. You mentioned Joshua Dubois on the horizon. What's your thoughts on it?
I think it's a terrific fight. I think it's an absolutely terrific fight, and I know, I think the job Don Charles has done with Dubois is a fantastic one. I think it's a terrific fight. I think it'll split a lot of people. But for me, I think Daniel Dubois will win. I think Dubois will win. I think you've seen the rise in his confidence. Dubois got it all, he just needs the confidence. And when he fought Joe Joyce, Joe broke his confidence. He's now 4 years older. I think he's got that confidence put into him by Don Charles. And I think he's going to be away in the fight, which he's been building up to. Saw his performance against Baby Miller, then the Ergovic performance. I think very few people picked him to beat Ergovic. Ergovic looked like a boss for 4 rounds, but then faded. And I think Dubois has got that ability now to go the rounds. And I think if he's still there in late rounds, I think it'll be a big problem for Joshua.
Right, Adam, it's a pleasure as always. Enjoy the rest of your time here in God's country, and thanks for speaking to me in Boxing News.
Cheers, Andy.